Now, to discuss the subject that we've been alluding to the entire time, storyboarding. When you are doing your storyboarding, really what you're trying to do is describe the angles and the action. And so, what you're mostly trying to do is how can the audience best view the action and how can you best show it, right? A lot of what you're going to be doing is trying to take internal action, meaning like their emotional state, and try to show it externally. This is particularly important in animation because we're trying to give the impression that there's some sort of internal motivation, that the character themselves are eliciting their emotions. Um, let's just discuss what the shots are, and then we can kind of go from there. So the extreme long shot basically is where it's a really big. I just took these literally are sequentially out of a Lord of the Rings. Copyright. Extreme long shot usually is used for your establishing shot. Sometimes it'll even be called that, and basically it's when you have a really big shot and you want to show a town, a house, a building. You're trying to establish the location, right? So it's pretty obvious. That's normally very often that'll be like the first shot, particularly in a big movie. They'll try to do an extreme long shot so that you understand the location. After that is just a long shot. So the long shot would be a full body shot, they might also call it. And generally, if you're trying to, again, it could be used for location purposes to establish where people are. But so where they are, and it can also be used for just establishing the location of the individuals as well, right? So we would still consider this kind of an establishment shot. Even when you're doing actions, they usually don't do as many large body actions, even in this shot, because it doesn't look as amazing. You know, if you ever think of like Bourne Identity, the movie, they cut really close and they just show arms flinging and what have you, which I think is pretty cheap and cheesy. People have kind of have noticed that camera trick. So, anyway, so that's the long shot. So you probably won't use any extreme long shots, but you might have a long shot. Just that's how you would establish. A medium shot is basically waist up. So this is probably the most common shot that you're going to see. Typically, with these ones and all the subsequent ones, we usually have the camera at an angle that is person height, so that you can get a sense of that you feel like you're in the scene, right? So it'll be whatever the perspective is of the people. So this is kind of your bread and butter, that kind of a thing. A close up would be basically the head, maybe the shoulders and up. So you might use it for like dialogue scenes, particularly good for like emotional scenes, things of that sort. There's also the extreme close up, which is when you get really, really close, and that's when you're really trying to get an emotion, or you're trying to highlight an action. I think I might have it in the next one. Yeah. So like right here, you can see we can use it for point of interest. So when he's talking to him about the ring, they cut to the hand, and you're like, huh, that's weird. He's fiddling with something, and it makes you think about it in the future. So when you're specifically trying to show something, it's really useful for that, and it's really useful for, like I said, emotional stuff. I already mentioned this earlier, but you want to be eye level. So here we're meant to be at the same level as the hobbits here, so that we are experiencing the scene from their point of view, not from Gandalf, who is much taller, right? So that's why their eye level in this case is this size. Now, if you do a high camera angle, you probably are familiar with this, meaning that you have the tilt in such a way that it's facing downwards. That is going to make the person, the subject matter, seem smaller, more muted, meek. So that's really handy for that. So you can see here, he looks small when they're basically discussing what to do with the ring, and he's kind of being like, oh, I don't know. But then watch. Then they'll do a low camera angle, and now all of a sudden, he seems much more empowered, right? He goes, I shouldn't. Why should I have to take it, right? So sometimes they'll call this worm's eye, but that will make the character look more powerful. So you can kind of see how between those two, they're able to shift real quickly, and that's how they kind of show the two parts of his personality, where he's his usual meek, but then when the ring kind of takes over, he's like this. Over the shoulder shot, it's a really common shot when you are doing dialogue between two people. So yeah, it's literally what the thing suggests. It's almost always used for dialogue. So like while he's talking, will be over the shoulder of him, and then when he's talking, will be over the shoulder of him. It was particularly useful for Lord of the Rings because they could use replacements So I don't know how tall Ian McKellen is, but he's probably close to him. He's normal person height. So in order to make him look small, they would have someone who's a very large person. And since we're just doing over the shoulder, you don't see his face. You can just do stand-ins, and then they subsequently could do the opposite, where they would use a little person for him, and then have Ian McKellen for him. Point of view shot. So the idea of the point of view shot is that you show the character looking at something. So in this case, Gandalf is looking down. You show the thing that they're looking at, which is actually what both of these are, and then you show a reaction. That's the typical way that you'll see it. You can cut this up differently. So you can do just him looking and then the thing and skip the reaction. You can also do the point of interest and then just the reaction. That's also possible. So you can kind of cut them up a little bit depending on how much time you have or how much you want to try and like here we want to show a shift of emotion. So here's curiosity, and then here's like, fear. So a master shot. So the idea here is it's sort of like an establishing shot. It's a very large, wide shot, and you try to get all the action into it. So that the whole thing, almost like if you were at a play, it's just seeing all of it in one shot. Now, the reason why you would do this is that way, for some reason, you can always cut away if there's something weird, like maybe he was making a weird face, but this was a really good, or a really good, position or something. We could just cut to the wide shot and show that, so that we could cut away from whatever mistake might be in that specific shot. Also, again, you can use it for establishing. For animation, it's really useful because what we can do is we can do a master, like just animate the whole thing as one big shot, and then just cut in. Since it's 2D animation, we can just cut in and cut out and cut in and cut out. All of our stuff's kind of flat anyway, regardless. So right here, you can see we could cut in to a point of interest. I superficially did this. I didn't actually cut in. You can kind of tell because it's very pixelated. You can also do what we call a cutaway. And so what you'll do is, while during the shot, you'll cut away to other things that are happening. So in this sequence specifically, what they did is they kind of cut away to all these different people to make them seem kind of scary, right? Like, oh, this guy's doing this, and they'll like cut away to like someone laughing, and to sort of give an ambiance and an idea of like what the area is like. Again, just to establish kind of the location. It can also be used just to fix an error. So there was something we didn't want, then we'll cut away to this, and then we'll cut back to, what originally was useful. Okay, so a really good example are storyboards, right? Because that's what you're gonna be doing anyway. So if you want to see some storyboard examples, the beginning sequence of Upright is like one of the best sequences in all the world. But it's a really good idea, whatever work you're doing, even if you're live action, to use storyboards, because it allows you to sort of figure it out before you would go shoot your video. But for animation, if it doesn't work as a storyboard, it's not going to work once you complete the full animation. So it's very important for us to make sure that we draw out all of it, and that we test it, we show it to other people, and that they can follow it, that they understand it, that people laugh where we want them to laugh, that people are sad where we want to be sad. If it's working there when we go do the animation, it'll work too. If it's not working in the storyboard, it's not going to work later on. This week's assignment is just going to be create a storyboard. I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Basically, you can kind of follow this video. What I want you to do is you're going to create a storyboard, a simple narrative. It has like kind of a beginning, a middle, and an end. I suggest just doing kind of like a one-off gag. I want you to draw it out. Now, you can do it really roughly, which is kind of what I did here, almost even kind of abstractly if you want, just to get the ideas down. But for your final project, or not your final project, for the project that you're having next week, you're going to just basically animate this. So the more time you spend on creating like more finalized graphics and nicer looking stuff in this assignment, the easier it'll be next week, because you can kind of just work from what you have. Because you'll just basically just keep working from the same storyboard file. So I would suggest, you can draw out, but maybe if you do your drawings, maybe draw them rough, but then maybe draw them a little bit nicer so that you can use those as your actual graphics and not have to completely redraw it again. And maybe even paint some of it. Or maybe you just do finalized lines this week, and then next week you'll paint it all in and then finish it. And it'll just make it easier to work with. So you might be tempted to just do stick figures, which normally would be okay, but I would try to do a little bit better than stick figures, because that way it'll be less to do next week. Otherwise, it'll be a whole lot for Like I said, try to have fun with it. This is an opportunity to kind of create an animation, more or less. I'm not looking for something super crazy, amazing, huge motions. I'm looking for like, oh, they're gonna walk across the thing, and then you just basically kind of like just a motion graphic comic kind of animation, where it's just very simple um, movements. But you get the idea of the story, and that you have like kind of a strong style and that sort of